G'day listeners! You're listening to the weekly Dartscast podcast with your co-host Alex Moss and Burton DeWitt. Here in Australia, we like to call something bonzo if it's awesome or it's great. So when you listen to the weekly Dartscast, you're listening to a bonzo show. They have amazing guests, awesome interviews, and they'll give you all the ins and outs of the darts that you'll need this week. So sit back, relax, and it's time to get into it. Oh, check that out. 180, you beauty, mate.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss and alongside me as always my co-host, he is the darts statistician, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. We're fresh off the World Grand Prix. It was a memorable week in Leicester, and in particular, a memorable week for Luke Humphries, who joins the Roll of Honour of PDC major winners after beating Gerwyn Price 5-2 in Sunday night's final. And you're going to hear from Luke a little bit later on. He's going to be calling in. Plus, we're also going to be joined by the recently crowned WDF World Cup men's singles champion. What a 2023 he's having as well. Barry Van Peer back on the show. But before then, let's look back at the World Grand Prix. Luke Humphries becoming a major champion. He's up to a career high of world number 4 now as well. But will the floodgates open now for him, do you think? Is there going to be more silverware coming his way in the coming months?
You know, we had a similar question 11 months ago about Michael Smith. Obviously, very different situation in that Smith had already played in 8 major finals and had lost them all. Luke Humphries had only made the one to date before this past weekend in Leicester. But, you know, he'd already emerged as unquestionably the best player who had yet to win a major. By the back end of last year, when he had won those 4 Euro Tour events early in the year, then started to make deep runs finally in majors, because he had not even made any deep runs since that final at the UK Open in 2021. But he made a quarterfinals at the European Championships, made a semifinal in Wolverhampton at the Grand Slam, then made another semifinal the following week at the Players' Championship Finals in Minehead, and he entered the World Championships. Most people thought in the Premier League, as long as he didn't go out early, and he went out relatively early at the World Championships, then laid a dud in the World Series events, laid a dud in the Masters, and he found himself on the outside looking in, but then made another deep run at the World Match Play earlier this year. So he had been getting to those later stages, but he hadn't made those 8 finals, but he had won so many other events. I mentioned those 4 Euro Tours last year, added another this year to go along with 5 other finals. He's been to the finals of half of the Euro Tour events this year. He's been to the finals of 2/3 of the Euro Tour events that he entered this year, that he played in this year. 3/5 of them, not 2/3. Thinking, I thought he'd skipped 3. He'd skipped only 2. But still, 60% of the ones he entered, he's made the final of. He's won 2 additional Players' Championship events, like he won 2 last year. He's been one of the form players in the world, and off the television stage, the form player alongside Dave Chisnell, who's won 3 Euro Tours this year to go along with the last Euro Tour event of last year. So he was unquestionably the best player, at least in my mind, who had not won a major. And overall CV was up there among active players, behind only maybe Dave Chisnell and Mervyn King. Although Mervyn King, of course, had won a World Masters over in the BDO, but since switching to the PDC, hadn't won a PDC major. He was behind maybe just those players among active players for their overall CV because of just how much he had done on the Euro Tour in the past 24 months. But he hadn't won that major yet. And we had this question about Michael Smith. Does winning that major mean the floodgates were going to open? And I stuck with my tip that should have won tip of the year last year, that he would still win a second and that would be the World Championship, because I said he'd win 2 last year. But I didn't think it was something that was necessary for his progression, because he was there. He was getting to the line. And yes, he didn't have it in that final session of the UK Open against Danny Noppert. He just ran out of steam. Yes, he got outplayed by Ross Smith, who came out firing early in that match at the European Championships. And even though he trailed off late on. By that point, he had already psychologically beaten Michael Smith. But it was going to come. It just happened to take longer than we thought it would. And once he crossed the line, we knew he would again, not because he won that first major, but because he was good enough and he would be in that position again, regardless of whether he had won the Grand Slam. I think it's the same as Luke Humphries. That said, I don't want to take anything away from how big this is, because even though he didn't need to win this to open the floodgates had already opened on the Euro Tour, and they were going to turn over into the majors, onto the television stage at some point or another. But to do it in that fashion, to do it really taking the first set off and then barely giving Gerwyn Price a sniff in the next 6 sets was just fantastic. It was one of the best performances I've seen in some time. The stats might not back it up. It was still, in the end, it was definitely a good performance, but it wasn't at those same levels that we'd saw even from, Michael Smith earlier in the tournament or some other players. But still 93 average in the end, especially when he was averaging under 70 after the first set, and kept it rising and never giving Gerwyn Price really any chance. He had a dart here, a dart there at the back end of combinations. He had a chance if he took out a combo finish to win that 7th set and get us to an 8th set. But then he steps up, bang in the middle of the treble 19, bang in the middle of the treble 19, and okay, it wasn't in the middle of the double 12, but who's going to fault him? It's still within, and he was a major champion. It was just an absolutely phenomenal performance from Luke Humphries. He will win another major. It very well could be the next event. But I don't think that him winning this is going to make that much of a difference in him crossing the line again. That said, he was putting a lot of pressure on himself. You could see it. You could see every time he had a poor visit, every time he had even a good visit instead of a great one, he was angry with himself. Even when Gerwyn Price was back on 360. And maybe some of that's respect for Gerwyn Price, because we know that if anyone can check out 360 in 6 darts, it's Gerwyn Price, even though it's mathematically impossible. But he was still giving himself too much, or showing too much frustration with himself. And maybe now that he's won a major, that will go away, and that will make him play freer. And if he's playing freer, that's only going to be scarier. But did he need to win this in order to open the floodgates? No. So I'm saying no, not because he's not going to win another, not because he's not going to win a boatload more, but because the floodgates were already opened. This was just the first time he crashed through with the title.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that. And just looking at the last 24 months, we've had 20 PDC major singles events, and Luke Humphries becomes the 12th different winner, which just goes to show the openness of this current era that we've got at the top level of the PDC. And a lot of those players that we've seen win those major events, I think Luke is the 7th new first-time winner. And you mentioned Michael Smith there. He's the only one of those 7 players. Okay, Luke's not had a chance to play in another one yet, but to have won another major title since then. So we've had a lot of players win that first major title and not able to back it up so far. And I guess there's 2 parts to that, isn't there? And one is because there are so many different winners at the moment at the top level, it's difficult to win these events, let alone winning one of them to go on and win a few of them when you've got so many different players that are pushing you and going up against you in these major events. And the second part, just with regards to the players themselves, is that you add your name to that roll of honour. Some players, they do that and it might change their psyche a little bit, their mindset. They might think, wow, I've won this event. There's pressure now to go and prove that it's not a one-off and to do it again. And you look at the rest of the field, they'll be thinking there's a target on that player's back now. They're a major champion. I want to go and claim their scalp and beat them. And I think in Luke Humphries' case, you mentioned it there about how he's been able to win a lot of events already without this major title. And you go back to the development tour 6-7 years ago when he started winning on that, 11 titles, and then the World Youth to cap it off. And then going into the senior events, 2022, 4 titles on the Euro Tour, 2 Players' Championships, and even before the week just gone, 2023, he's already got another Euro Tour, 2 Players' Championships. So the last couple of years, we've seen him win multiple titles each season, which is the mark of a very good player in the PDC. And he has been touted for a long time as one of those next players in that list to win a major title. And I guess really you look at Luke Humphries and he has followed that blueprint of win a Players' Championship, win a Euro Tour, and then win a major. And it's not always the case with these players. Some will skip those first two, like Andrew Gilding, and win a major title. Whereas Luke, he has gone down that route of winning the smaller events, working his way up. And you go back 10, 15 years and players' stage time in the PDC, it was 4, 5, 6 events on TV a year. There wasn't a Euro Tour, the World Series. So the jump from Players' Championship floor events straight to the majors is quite a big jump. Whereas now we've got the Euro Tour, the World Series. We've seen Luke involved in that this year. I think he has been able to really develop and progress at a much quicker rate. And I think this title, it was coming. There were some scary moments on the way, in particular that quarterfinal with Peter Wright, surviving those 3-match darts to lose it 3-1. But what a comeback to win that game from 2-0 down 3-2. And from there on, apart from losing that first set to Gerwyn Price, and with that sub-70 average, he looked like a player that was heading towards that major title, beat Joe Cullen 4-0 in the semis, and then come back from 1-0 down to beat Price 5-2, and he was a deserved winner. And he's talking about the goal now is to be world number 1, world champion. And for me, I think there's no reason why he can't do that. He's number 4 now, 3 more spots to climb. And I think this title is just going to keep building that confidence that he's already got. I think he is a potential winner at Ali Pali in 2 or 3 months' time. And if he does that, he could well be top of the rankings as well.
Well, one of the people that he jumped in the rankings this past week is the former world number 1 and the man he beat in the final, Gerwyn Price. It's the second defeat in 2 major finals so far in 2023 for the Iceman. But despite that, how should he assess his week in Leicester?
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for Gerwyn Price to miss out again on a major title. And if we're just looking at major singles finals he's been in during his career, this is only the second time that Gerwyn's lost back-to-back finals. The previous time, the 2019 Players' Championship finals, followed by the 2020 UK Open, both times losing 11 legs to 9 to Michael van Gerwen in Minehead. Well, how did he bounce back from that? Well, we had the pandemic first, but during that behind closed doors / small crowd era that we had, he won the next 3 finals, the World Grand Prix, the World Series finals, and the biggest one there is, the World Championships, to go top of the rankings. And I'm not expecting another global pandemic to spark off now that Price has lost back-to-back major finals again. But I do think it is going to be a source of real motivation for Gerwyn Price to get it right next time round. And I think back to the Premier League, we spoke about Gerwyn Price after he lost the final in the playoffs to Michael van Gerwen, having dominated the season. He finished, I think it was 6 points clear at the top, and even up to the semi-finals on that finals night, the 107 average to beat Johnny Clayton 10-2, he looked like he was ready to win that title and prove why he was the best player in the tournament, but lost out to Michael van Gerwen 11-5 in the final. And I think with the World Grand Prix, it can be hard to gauge the level of performances with it being double start. And I always think a high 80s average is around a 94, 95 in a normal game. And then low 90s, you're talking a high 90s into a ton average. And that's where Gerwyn Price was pretty much all of last week. He didn't drop a set until the semi-finals against Michael Smith, where he came back from 2-1 down to win that 1-4-2. And the final, you look at it, he didn't play that badly. 91 average, 50% doubling in, over 50%, just over doubling out. And he lost the third set with a 102 average, the 6th set with a 96 average. And it's not often in the World Grand Prix that you see players losing sets with 95 plus averages, let alone twice as well. So I think Luke Humphries, he had that slow start, the below 70 average in the first set. But after that, he averaged more than Price in each of the sets, and he won 5 of the next 6. The 99, 102, 95 set averages got him the next 3 sets to go 3-1 up. And it did have shades of the 2021 Grand Prix final, where Price, again, averaging over 90 in this format and losing to an inspired Johnny Clayton 5-1 on that occasion. And to top it all off, the 1-3-8 from Luke to win it in the decider of the 7th set. Gerwyn Price waiting on 24 to pull it back to 4-3 in sets. So I think when that goes in, you know it's not going to be your day. And I don't think Price is going to need more time to reflect on this one. I don't think he's going to let the dust settle more than it has. I think he's going to be looking to the next one now and moving on. And that's the good thing about this time of year. There's plenty of titles to be won. And as I say, on paper, 91 average, 50%, double in, double out. it is going to take something special to stop you, and that is what Luke Humphries produced there after that first set. So I think we're going to see with Price, there's been times before, and there'll certainly be times in the future where he's going to be the player dishing out those kind of performances and lifting these titles. So I think if he can put that frustration to one side, he's got to the final. I think he's just going to use that as more fuel on the fire to make sure that next time he gets to a final, he is going to be the one lifting that title, and he is going to be adding another title to what he's already won.
Yeah, I agree completely. It was, I think, the easy thing to miss is that Gerwyn Price lifted his game through that final as well. It just so happened that he was going against someone who was playing inspired darts and didn't let up. And every time Gezi picked up his game, every time Gezi found a gear he hadn't yet used, Luke Humphries found a gear to match and then surpass that. And it made it a near impossible ask for him to get back in that. But going back, that semifinal against Michael Smith, first time Bully Boy made even the quarterfinals of this event. It was the only major he had not made the quarters of before. Well, he made it to the semifinals. And early on, it looked like that maybe that, what was it, fairly even match, but Michael Smith had edged in front. Gerwyn Price lifted his game and didn't let Bully Boy back into it. Never let Martin Schindler into the match, although Martin Schindler never let himself into the match, to be fair. In the quarterfinals and even earlier, Ratajski lifted his game in the third set and looked like maybe there was some life in that. Gerwyn Price then lifted his even more. He had a way to keep growing into the match and building into the match. And he'll have to take confidence from that, because even though he didn't win, he lifted to every challenge that came in front of him. And it took just a monumental performance where his opponent lifted even more to beat him. I don't think you can fault him for this past week. That said, it is definitely going to be frustrating, because for all that hard work that we've talked about so much that he put in earlier this year, winning those 3 consecutive Premier League nights and around that winning 2 Euro tours, topping the Premier League table, looking like the best player in the world, because for 3 months he was the best player in the world. He has no major single titles to show for it. Yes, he won the World Cup with Johnny Clayton, but besides that, he hasn't won a title. A major title this year. And that's something new for him, because you go back since winning that first major in 2018, he's won a major every year. He repeated in the Grand Slam in 2019. He won a pair of them in 2020. He followed that by winning the World Darts Championship at the end of the 2020 season, but you can say that's 2021, but who cares? He still managed to win his 3rd Grand Slam in 4 years at the back end of 2021. And then last year, he got over the line in a classic final against Dirk van Dijvenbode in Amsterdam in the World Series of Darts finals. But he hasn't won one this year. He had, the World Cup, but he hasn't won anything else. He hasn't even won a World Series event, losing a pair of finals. It's got to be frustrating, because for all the quality and for all of him being in with a chance, being in that position, he hasn't done it. He hasn't won a major. Even though he played really well, he wasn't all that close. There were 3 sets where he was not even at the races because, Luke Humphries was just that much better. I think he should take from this week that he's playing well enough. It's not going to be every major final where someone in essence is averaging 105 against you for that long. Because if you take away the first set, add 8 to 10 points to the averages, in essence, it was about a 105 performance that Luke Humphries was playing at over an extended period of time in set play. But it will happen. And even if he was only averaging 102 or 100, that might have been enough at times to still stay in front, to still push and make Gerwyn Price play catch up, where Gerwyn Price isn't as comfortable. But I don't think that's what he's going to take. I think he's going to take what the look on his face was, and that is just pure dejectment, feeling like he's further from winning than he really is. He should assess his week better. He should assess his week as that he was one of the best players over the course of the week, and he put himself in the position it just wasn't meant to be. But I don't think that's how he's going to assess his week. I think he's going to feel disappointed. That said, a disappointed Gerwyn Price can be a very dangerous one. So we'll see what comes from now. You mentioned how many major events there are coming up, but it's going to be important that he lifts one of those, because maybe the confidence will start to disappear if he's not winning despite some good performances.
Well, we've spoken about a disappointed Gerwyn Price. We've spoken about the newly crowned major champion in the PDC. Let's hear from him now. Here's our chat with the World Grand Prix champion, Luke Humphries. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned World Grand Prix champion, Luke Humphries. Thanks for the time, Luke. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing really well. It's been obviously a mad few days for me, but I'm doing really well.
Glad to hear. Yeah, we're talking only a few days on from Sunday night in Leicester, where you became a major champion in the PDC, winning the World Grand Prix. What have these last few days been like as a major champion?
Yeah, it's been quite crazy actually. Obviously, I didn't really realise all the commitments that come with after being a major champion. But it's been, like I said, it's been quite a few crazy days. Obviously, it was my son's birthday on Monday, straight after the final. So that was a whole day full of celebrating his day, and all the family was around and stuff. So it was quite fitting actually. Obviously, everyone got to come around and see the trophy and stuff like that. And then obviously Tuesday was a kind of a rest day, but being a dad, you don't really get much rest, so still things to do. And then obviously today I've done all my media commitments, and I don't really think the whole scenario is sort of sunk in yet, but I'm sure it will very soon.
Well, let's take you back to Sunday night, because there's been a lot of new major winners in the PDC over the last couple of years, and we had the pleasure of chatting to the one just before you, Andrew Gilding, only a few days after he won the UK Open. It was a Sunday night in Minehead, not much going on, and his celebration, he told us, was going to the car to grab a pot noodle. So how did your Sunday night in Leicester compare?
That's the most Andrew Gilding thing I've ever heard. Obviously I went to the bar. One of my sponsors bought a bottle of champagne, and we toasted, obviously, just had a quick drink, and then, it was straight back home for me that night. I didn't really get to celebrate it as much as obviously you probably would want to for your first one. But, like I said, I have other commitments. I'm a family man, and, it's my son's birthday, so, I didn't really want to stay up too late and not get up early for his celebrations. And what better ways, what better present to give him than the trophy? That was more than enough for me to, celebrate actually winning rather than, the after party part.
Definitely. Well, we'll come back to this past week later, but let's rewind to when we last had you on. It was just before the World Championships, and although it ended in the last 16 for you, 2022 was still a hugely impressive season, winning all those Euro Tours, getting to number 5 in the world. So how did you reflect on the year once you got home from Ali Pali?
Well, I looked back at it and thought, I wasn't too well at the Worlds, but that's just one of them things. It can't be an excuse. It just didn't happen for me. I still made the last 16, which is isn't too bad considering the circumstances I was under. But I just didn't let it bother me at the end of the day. That the World is what it is. Sometimes it goes well there, sometimes it don't for me. But upon reflection of the whole year, I thought I made massive strides in my career. Making my first stage title in Munich, and then obviously backing that up with another 3, which I never even dreamed of. I was hoping to sort of maybe pick my first one up if I could. That was my goal at the start of 2022, and then to go on and pick 4 up, and then I think I won 1 Pro Tour title as well, 1 or 2. I thought looking back on it, I had a couple of major semi-finals as well. So looking back, I thought it was a successful season. Got myself up to world number 5, and it set the foundations for this year. To improve on it. Obviously I'd done quite well, but I thought there's always room for improvement. You can always find ways of improving things, and I found a way to do it this year as well.
Yeah, you certainly did, and you didn't have much of a break between Ali Pali and the start of this year, getting back into action. You were off on the World Series to Bahrain. You've also played Madison Square Garden as well, a few other World Series events. So what have those experiences been like, getting to go to new countries to play darts?
They were fantastic experiences. Obviously these are places that are, maybe except for New York, these are sort of places I've been that I probably would never get to go to if it weren't for darts. Bahrain was a great experience. The food over there was amazing. It's just small things like that, different cultures that you get to learn about and experience, and all the people over there were so friendly, and it was just nice to visit a country that I probably would never have visited if it weren't for that. So and obviously going to New York, which as you could see on my social media, I did some incredibly great things. Going to see the New York Jets, that was some experience, and of course the helicopter ride with Dimitri was breathtaking. Something I'd love to do again one day. And these are all experiences that I'm very lucky to get to do, and I think it might give me a little bit more hunger. I think because when you get these experiences and you get to enjoy it, you want to keep doing it. I wanted to, in my mind, I want to be back and doing it all again next year. So maybe that was that little bit of taste of high life, should you say, that makes you want it more, and it helps you to put your head down and think, right, go on and win some things now, and that you'll be picked for it again the year after.
Yeah, you got that first taste of the World Series, and you've made it no secret as well that you want to be involved in the Premier League as well. And a lot of fans, they had you in their predicted lineups for this year's one. Before the lineup was announced, how are you feeling about your chances of being involved this year?
I was probably more confident before the Masters. I felt more confident that I would have been in. At the Worlds, I probably would have been in. I probably would have been picked. If it had been picked like it usually is after the Worlds. But as soon as Chris won, I knew there was a small chance that they could, I could be the one that has to miss out. Maybe looking back, maybe it was the right decision. I was gutted that I wasn't in it, but looking back and looking on back what's happened this year, maybe it was the right decision. I could have played in it and not played well, and it could have hampered my progress. And as I had just had a newborn son, I would have spent a lot less time with him and stuff like that. So the way this year has gone, like I said, maybe it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't get picked, and maybe the PDC got it right. Maybe they looked at it the way that I'm looking at it now and thought, let's just let him enjoy a year with his son and put someone more, maybe a bit more experience in, like Chris has, maybe picking up a TV title. And like Matt said to me when he rang me up to tell me I wasn't in it, he said, just go and prove us wrong, and we know the talent you got. Just go out there and prove us wrong. And I've kind of done that in a good way. I think he'll probably look at it and think, I've proved us wrong. But I don't think it was the wrong decision. I think it probably was the right one in the end. So that's just the way sometimes it works.
Well, you've certainly proved yourself again this year on the Euro Tour. 6 finals in 10 appearances, winning one of those finals. You had that 9-darter as well in one of the finals, semi-finals of the World Match Play, and we come on to last week, the World Grand Prix. Did you sense that a run like this was on the cards, or did it feel like any other major going into it that you did have a good chance anyway?
Yeah, I always think I've got a chance of winning anything I play, especially major tournaments at the moment. The difference is the World Grand Prix, it's not really one of them tournaments that you'd go in thinking, I've got a really good chance in, because it's double in. It's a leveler. If you just can't get in, regardless of how good you are, it's just going to hamper your chances of winning. And it's quite ironic how over the years, doubles have kind of been my Achilles heel for me, to progress further in my career. And then, in that tournament, I think I was 50 or 51% getting in, doubling in. So, it just shows how much I've progressed and how much I've, tried to improve parts of my game, and that was obviously a part of my game that needed to improve. Everyone knows I'm a heavy scorer, I'm a good scorer, big 140, 180 hitter, but it was the doubles that would most likely let me down most of the time, and now I've just proved to myself that I've put both together, and when I do, look what happened, I've won a major title.
Yeah, we saw that last week, and looking at the run, started off with that win against Darryl Gurney on Tuesday night. Then you get past Luke Woodhouse in a closer game than the scoreline suggests, 3-0. All those sets go into a last leg. But I want to touch on the Friday night, the quarterfinals, where you said afterwards it was one of the best wins of your career. 2-0 down in sets to Peter Wright. You survived those match darts. To go out 3-1, you win it 3-2, and we saw from the celebrations after how much it meant to you. So did that win in particular give you that extra bit of belief that it could be your week?
A little bit, but I still stand by that. Even with that great final performance I put in the World Grand Prix, I still stand there and say that that game against Peter Wright was one of the best games I've ever played, because it allowed me to go on and win the title. That game was even more important now, I said it in a couple of my interviews. I said, that could be one of the massivest games ever for me, because if I go on and win the title, then I'll just really turn everything around for myself. It could have easily lost that 3-0 and we wouldn't even be talking on the phone now. But, that showed that bit of grit and determination that you need to win these major titles. It's not always going to go your own way. It's not always going to go the way you want it to. And that game with Peter was some game, maybe game in the tournament almost. And, I showed great resilience to come back, and it's won me this massive major title that I've always been craving. So looking back, obviously I still think that was the biggest game of my career that I've ever produced.
And we saw as well the mutual respect between you and Peter as well. Peter, he often mentions your name now, talking about the best players. What did he say to you on stage after? Was it well done, now go on and win it?
He said exactly that. I really do get on well with Peter. He's a really, really nice guy. He has sort of not mentored me, but he's like, he always gives me a little bit of advice here and there, and he's always like, telling me things I do wrong. Maybe I should improve on this and change this. And, he has sort of helped me in parts of my game that he probably wish he hadn't now. No, I'm joking. But, he has been a great help for me. He's a really, really top guy. And, I think the way he took defeat he showed great respect. I think he realised that, I pulled off a great escape there against him. Played some great darts. And I think, obviously when he hugged me, he said, tapped me on the shoulder, said, no, you go on and win this now. This is going to be your first major. And I did.
Yeah, it's a good prediction there from Peter, and there's less drama in the semi-finals. You get past Joe Cullen 4-0, you're through to your second major final. And I remember when we spoke to you on the show after your first major final, the UK Open, you said that you had 14 minutes after beating Michael van Gerwen to prepare for the final. Fast forward to this one, you've got a whole 24 hours between games. So how different was it having all that time to prepare and also think about the magnitude of the occasion as well?
Yeah, that was a very quick turnaround. It was something that, obviously, because I'd not made any sort of big finals like that before in my career, you don't realise that you don't have much time in between, massive games. So yeah, that was quite a strange experience for me at the time. But obviously I've improved on that over the last couple of years. On the European tours, 3 or 4 games in one day, isn't it? So I've combated that now already. But I think it's only the third major. I think it is, the third major of the whole calendar that the final was played on just one day. There's a lot of majors that we have: quarterfinal, semi-final, final, semi-final, final. It's only the match play and the Grand Prix that the final was just on one day. So I had a good chance to rest up and try and get some energy back in me for a big day, and it obviously definitely helped me. I performed well, played well, and I didn't really think about the occasion too much, because if you do, I think that sometimes you can let that get the best of you. I just knew that if I turned up and played like I did, I knew that I could win.
Yeah, and it was a special performance in the final. 93 average with the double start, the 170 finish, 8 180s, and of course the 138 finish to win it. Firstly, has Keith Deller been in touch yet about your preferred route for the 138?
He actually did message me. He said, it's always great hitting a 138 to win a title, isn't it, mate? And I just, had a laugh. But then his will always be better than mine, because, his was to beat one of the greatest players ever and win a world title. But I'll take a close second for that finish. It was an important finish. If I miss that and Gussie takes out the 24th, then 4-3, we go off to the break, and he probably feels like he's well in the game then. So yeah, I thought it was a very important and massive finish from myself there, and that was another point of the whole weekend that I was very proud of myself for doing.
And as fans watching, we always enjoy seeing players win their first major titles, the emotion on stage, celebrating with the family as well. For us who probably won't get to experience that, just describe what those moments were like.
Yeah, they're raw moments. These ain't things that are pre-planned. These are things that just happen in the moment. And I think that's why, the PDC are sort of showing it a lot more, showing these moments that happen behind the scenes and stuff like that, because I think the fans like to see what happens, how we feel when we win. Does it mean a lot to us all? Does people sit back and not really care when they win? I think you're starting to see the people that, really care about winning. And, like I did embrace with my dad when I won, because, it means a lot to not just me, but to him as well. He's been on this journey with me for forever. So yeah, it was nice to embrace, and I think a few people have done that before. I think Joe did it with his dad when he won the Masters. He has the same bond as I guess with his dad as I do with mine. It's just you just want to go and see your dad straight away, and that's why you see these natural reactions from us. Like they're very raw. Sometimes I don't really celebrate as much, but I had to there. It was too much of an incredible moment for me.
No, we can't blame him. You mentioned your dad there. You dedicated the title to him. You said that the trophy is going to be going on his mantelpiece as well. Is it there now, or are you going to enjoy the trophy for a little bit longer first?
It's going to go with him. Obviously, I've got to give it back soon to get it engraved and stuff, which is going to be great for me to have my name on that trophy. And then it will be straight to him until obviously I have to give it back maybe next year sometime. But yeah, I stay true to my word. He will be the one that has it because he deserves it more than anybody. So, and although to be fair, it's quite a heavy trophy, so you might have to reinforce that mantelpiece.
Yeah, and there could be more trophies coming, and it's a quick turnaround for you. Obviously, you've got the Euro Tour coming up this weekend. You mentioned it was your son's birthday on Monday. It's been a busy few days, but have you had a chance to watch the final or any of the games back? Because we know you've said to us before that sometimes you like to watch your games back as well.
Over the last sort of maybe 12 months, I probably haven't watched any games back, to be honest. I don't really get the time to. I think I play too many games to be able to watch any back. But I probably will watch the final back. I actually haven't seen the final back yet. It's been so busy that I haven't really had a chance to do it. I've obviously seen the 138 about 100 times. Probably replayed that 100 times. But yeah, I haven't watched it back, but I definitely will. Obviously I've forgotten a lot of what's happened through the game and what happened. Obviously I remember the 170 and I remember, it's the 138, but in between it's kind of a blur. I think when you're in the zone, you don't really remember all the things that are going on and what's happening. So yeah, I'll probably sit down with my girlfriend and we'll watch that back and relive the moment again.
Very nice. Well, two more before we let you go, and this is really looking at the journey that you've been on to get to a major title. And we look at your career. You've won development tours, the World Youth Players Championships, Euro Tours, now a major. On paper, it looks like the blueprint to success in the PDC, but we know it's not been a constant upward curve. And I remember the first time we spoke with you quite a few years ago, and you played on the development tour 2011, 2012. The results didn't go your way. You stopped playing for 18 months, and we joked off air about it was one of your friends' Super League teams that got you back playing on this comeback. So coming through that must make this win extra special as well. Yeah,
and I've done it on the route from the bottom. I won my first development tour first, then I won my challenge tour, then I won the next challenge tour, and then I went to World Youth Champion, then I won a Pro Tour, then I won a Euro Tour, and now I've won a major. Obviously there's one thing left for me, and that is a world title. I could win 20 major titles, but if you end your career without that world title, it will never feel as sweet as it would if you didn't. So for me, obviously like yourself, started from the bottom, worked my way up to it, winning pretty much everything that the PCs had to offer. There's just one thing left for me. I'm not saying I'm going to retire when I do it. I'm just saying that's the one thing for me that is missing from my CV. Of course, it's not missing because I haven't played in that many of them. But, I've got maybe 20 years to go on and win one. And, if I can play like I know I can and keep progressing like I have been, I'm sure that my opportunity will come. So yeah, that's what's left for me from like you say, starting from the bottom to where I am now, world number 4. I've got every chance of really reliving my dreams, and that's obviously being world number 1 and world champion. So we'll see what can happen over the next few years.
Definitely. And just lastly, before we let you go, you've also been open as well about your battle with anxiety and how you considered quitting darts because of it. So for any of our listeners who might be going through the same thing or similar, I'm sure seeing your victory on Sunday, that's going to inspire them on what they can achieve. So what would be your message to anyone who is struggling with anything like that?
Well, I hope, hopefully you're right, a little bit of inspiration towards, people that have seen my journey, that know me from the start and seen, the struggles I went through, contemplating giving that up because, that was really, really, really a point in my life where I was ready to do it. But I had the right support around me, and as long as you got the right support, it can really help you and stop you making rash decisions. The only thing I'd say is don't give up on your dreams, don't give up on, life as a whole. Because there's so many good things that you can do out there. Luckily for me, my dream was always playing darts, and I still get to do it. So, that helped me combat it. But you just have to find something in your life that you really enjoy, you really love doing, and that will make you more happy than anything. Spending time with your family is for me, is the best cure for any sort of thing for anxiety and stuff like that.
Can't argue with that, Luke. It's always a pleasure to get you on the show. Congratulations on winning that first major title, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year as well.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you.
Thanks again to Luke for joining us. Now let's get on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. If you missed the announcement over the weekend, we are pleased to have secured a new sponsor for the show with Condor. I'm sure many of our listeners will know all about Condor. They're one of the most well-respected darts manufacturers in the world, based in Japan. They sponsor a lot of top talent from all over the globe, Jose de Souza, Matt Campbell, to name a few of them. So a big thank you to Condor for coming on board to support the show. We are looking forward to working with them more over the coming months, so keep an eye out for that. And as I say, they're going to be sponsoring our question of the week. It's a long-running feature on the show. Every Monday we put out a question on our social media for you guys to answer, and also we invite you to get in touch with your thoughts on that question as well. So this week's question of the week, off the back of the World Grand Prix, is who is going to be the next PDC world number one? The options we've put in the poll are Michael van Gerwen, Luke Humphries, Gerwyn Price, or other. Who are you going for?
Well, I actually dreamt this question the other day, and if what was in my dream is correct, it's other. But I do not expect that Josh Rock is going to be the next number one. He certainly is a future one, but I'm not sure how he became world number one, because in my dream, Luke Humphries won another major title, and that moved Josh Rock to number one. So I don't know what was going on. There's no logic or sensibility to it, but that is what in fact happened. Was it last night or the night before? I can't remember. But as far as who do I think will actually be the next number one, so much of it comes down to the World Championships. As well, right, it should, because potentially £500,000 on the offer for whoever wins it. And if you look at the post-World Championship order of merit right now, Michael Smith is number one, but there are four other players who, if you add £500,000 to their post-World Championship ranking, that would be enough if everyone else went out first match to move to number one, including Gerwyn Price, who would just nip Michael Smith in that scenario. Nathan Aspinall would be a little bit further ahead, Luke Humphries and Michael van Gerwen. So if we start from that point of view, those are the most likely, because they're the ones who right now are in a position to move to world number one after the World Championships. That could change. If Dave Chisnell wins his first major at the Grand Slam, or if Johnny Clayton gets back into the winner's circle at one of the next couple major events, that will move them into that conversation of the players who theoretically could move to world number one if they win the World Championships, if all the other results go into play. And that's where we have to start. The question is, will Michael Smith be world number one after the World Championships? And right now, I think it's possible. And now that he's, getting back into form, that run to the semifinals at what is admittedly to him his worst and least favorite major, is definitely going to help him get confidence that his game's moving in the direction it needs to be to retain the world title. But he isn't the favorite to retain it. And he isn't the favorite to make, even the final right now, especially considering the 4 and 5 seed, as things currently stand, are the two finalists from this past weekend in Leicester. So it opens the door for someone. And the favorite has to be Michael van Gerwen. Michael van Gerwen could make the final of the World Championships, and even if he loses it, that might be enough to stay ahead of Luke Humphries or Nathan Aspinall or Gerwyn Price or someone else who might win it. And that means that MVG is the favorite. And I do think MVG is the next number one. I think he's close enough that if he wins either of the next two World Championships, that'll probably put him back to world number one. Obviously, if he wins it a year from now, Michael Smith will have £500,000 dropping off. Although if Michael Smith wins this year, that might change things. But he is the favorite because he's the closest. And I think overall, he's playing at the highest standard, or the second highest standard behind only Luke Humphries, or third highest if you include Gerwyn Price. And yes, I'm now saying Luke Humphries is playing at that next level. This has now moved him into that tier. But I don't think he's playing that much better. And Luke Humphries could be the world champion. Michael van Gerwen could go out early at the World Championships. Gerwyn Price could get back to what he was playing earlier this year and win the world title and become number one again, win other events as well. But I think Michael van Gerwen is the most likely answer because, one, he's the closest, and two, overall, he is the best or second best player in the world right now. And therefore, I'm going to go with what should be the most likely answer, and that is Michael van Gerwen.
Well, you say it's the most likely answer. It's also the most popular answer among our listeners at the moment. Time of recording on this Tuesday evening, 66% of our listeners are going with Michael van Gerwen, the current world number 2 as things stand. 13% are going with the newly crowned World Grand Prix champion Luke Humphries. 12% going with the runner-up at the weekend, the world number 5, I should say now, Gerwyn Price. And then 9%, they might be dreaming it like you are with Josh Rock, going with other. And we are going to start posting these out, question of the weeks out on our other platforms like YouTube and Instagram as well. So do get in touch with us on there as well if you want to get your thoughts read out on the show. We've had one coming from Elliot who says MVG has to be my pick. He's in contention to take it by the start of next year, particularly if going further than Smith at the Worlds. And like you, like Elliot, like a lot of our listeners are voting, I think the wise money has to be with MVG because, as you say, you look on the current rankings, you look at the rankings post Ali Pally, and he is the closest to Michael Smith at the moment, and he's the player that has been there and done it all. And I spoke earlier about how many different players that we've seen win major titles over the last 2 years. Well, Michael van Gerwen, he's easily won the most in that period, 6 in total. 3 of them, we've got to mention, are unranked titles, 2 Premier Leagues and the recent World Series final. So if those 3 events had been ranked, he would be the world number 1 right now, but that's just the way that the rankings work. 3 of the events that he's won are unranked, but you look at what he has won after he had that dry 2021 where he didn't win any major titles last year, winning the match play, the Grand Prix and the Players' Championship final second half of 2022. So he has come back strong from that dip in form, not near the levels of his dominant peaks, I want to say 2015, 2017, around that time, but he is starting to win these major events more regularly. And worth mentioning as well that coming up for the rest of the year, going into that World Championships, and a lot of talk is about Peter Wright having a lot of prize money to defend, including the 500 grand from winning the title 2 years ago. Michael Smith, he's got the runner-up money to defend. He lost to Peter Wright in that final. Michael van Gerwen, if you remember, one of several players that was forced to withdraw from that World Championships. I think it was the last 32 or the last 16 because he tested positive for the virus. So you'd expect him to make a bit of money on the result that he had 2 years ago. And I think aside from Michael van Gerwen, you mentioned about Luke Humphries there, Nathan Aspinall as well, throw him into the mix. They are the last 2 major ranking winners. Nathan Aspinall winning the match play. They've put themselves in with a shout, I think, and Gerwyn Price as well, although he's got that Grand Slam title money to defend next month. I think he's going to be in the conversation as well, given how he's played this year. But I think, like you, like a lot of our listeners, Michael van Gerwen, he is the smart choice. But I wouldn't rule out a new world number 1, maybe a Luke Humphries or a Nathan Aspinall. And yeah, I think it does all hinge on Ali Pally at the end of the year, because it is very difficult to get that world number 1 spot without having that world title money on the order of merit. So Michael van Gerwen, I think he's the safe shout. You've got other players in the mix there as well. But let's give a final mention to the player that is world number 1 right now, Michael Smith, because he'll be wanting us to be answering this question for a lot longer than the end of this year going into next year, because if he wins the world title, defends it, he's still going to be world number 1, and we're going to be answering this question for a lot longer.
And that very well may be what happens. The question we won't be answering for that much longer is who's going to be playing at the European Championships in Dortmund as the race concludes this weekend with the final Euro Tour event of season 2023. Aside from Chris Dobey, who's currently 1 win away from knocking Steve Beaton out and moving into, well, not even the last. He could be moving up as far as with 1 win to 29th on countback. But would knock Steve Beaton out. So other than Chris Dobey, who's right there, is there anyone else you could see sneaking into the field?
Yeah, I think all eyes are going to be on Chris Dobey for this race to the European Championship, but there are several other players that are still in the mix going into this weekend. I mean, the field, it is mostly set for the tournament. At the time of recording, we don't have the draw for this weekend's last European Tour event of the year. We could well see a couple of players pull out. You never know. You could see some of the top players think, you know what, I'm going to have a weekend off, try and get a weekend off before the rest of the major events coming up. And if that does happen, Mike De Decker, currently 34th on that list, he is the second alternate. So if two players drop out, he's going to be in, and he's only a grand off Steve Beaton. So again, he could be someone that comes into the fray in the next few days if players pull out. And Steve Beaton, coincidentally, I believe he's the third alternate player. So if we have three pull out, he could have a chance to climb up those rankings. Otherwise, he's going to need a few favours this weekend because he didn't qualify for this European Tour event when the qualifiers are on. But aside from those players, looking further below, there's a lot of work for these players to do to get in. I think you've got Dylan Slevin is the next closest that's qualified for this weekend. He's going to need a quarter-final minimum. Then you've got the likes of Alan Suter, Ryan Joyce, Mickey Mansell, Lee Evans. All these players are going to need a semi-final. Then you've got other players that are going to need a final or a title. It's tough to predict without seeing a draw, but we can go off recent performances. And I know a lot of his success this year has been on the floor, but the player that I'm going to pick out is one that I've just mentioned, Ryan Joyce. He could be an outsider to sneak in because he's made two finals in Players' Championships this year. The first one of those, you've only got to go as far back as July. He's had a semi-final as well in early September, and the last Players' Championship event that we had only 2 weeks ago got to the final, and it was an impressive run, beating Christian Kist. We all know how well he's been playing recently. Beat Michael Van Gerwen with a 105 average, Johnny Clayton with a just under a ton average, then fell short against Gary Anderson, who we know, again, a player that's been in some excellent form himself. So some big runs that we've seen there from Ryan Joyce. And, okay, they've not been on the stage, which is where the Euro Tour is going to be played this weekend. But I think he's got a chance. And his last European Tour event that he played, I think it was European Tour 10 a couple of months ago, beat Dave Chisnell on his way to get into the last 16. And looking at his results on the Euro Tour, his best run ever has been a last 16. So he's going to have to break new ground, set a Euro Tour PB, get to a quarter final, and then get to a semi-final to be in with a chance. But I think based on the player's form this year, I think he is certainly someone to watch. And I think it's worth mentioning as well that for some people that are new, that the draw for the European Championship, it is based on this order of merit. So first in the rankings, we'll play 32nd, and as things stand provisionally, Ross Smith, the defending champion of the European Championships, in 21st. He's the first alternate for this weekend. He would play the World Match Play champion, Nathan Aspinall, the 12th seed. And, okay, these positions could change, but what a first-round draw that would be in a few weeks' time. And just lastly, the race for top spot, Dave Chisnell. He's won 3 Euro Tours this year. The only way that he's going to miss out on that first seed, I think, is if Luke wins the title, Luke Humphries that is, and Chizzy goes out before the final. So plenty to keep an eye on this weekend.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with Chris Dobey, even though the question says otherwise. You know, as I mentioned in the intro to the question, he just needs one win to crack into the field, and would almost certainly guarantee him that spot because it would require an absurd set of results for him to miss out if he wins. One, it would require both Ricardo Pietreczko and Midas Razma to win, which would mean then Dobey's down to 31st. He would need to lose his next match, and then he would need either a ridiculous final or a bunch of players making the semifinals or finals. It's unlikely. So Dobey, a win, and he's probably into the event. But there are other people who can cross in, and you mentioned Ryan Joyce. I think he is the best bet because of how well he's playing. You mentioned the two finals so far this year in Players' Championship events, and I think he's been a little unfortunate not to go further a couple other times. I think he's playing maybe not the best starts we've seen from him since joining the PDC, because he's won a title before and he has made the World Match Play and World Grand Prix before, and I don't think he's playing at that level, but I think he's playing more consistently over the past few months than we've seen from him in the past. And if you're playing consistently, that'll make you a force in any tournament because you should be bringing a standard that can win any match. It doesn't mean it will win any match. You could lose first match, but it means you could win, and that means you are a good chance to pull off a run at any given tournament. And right now, depending on what Dobie does, depending on what Riccardo Pietreczko does, a semifinal might be enough to get him in. If one of those two players who I just mentioned loses and there aren't any withdrawals, I'll get to that in a second, then Ryan Joyce would get in the semifinal. Otherwise, he'd need a final. Everyone else behind him, other than people tied with him, would need most likely to make a final in that situation. Although Martin Lukeman could get in the semifinal. And Martin Lukeman is playing better right now than he was earlier in the year. Some of the players further down who need a title to get in, how about Jules Van Dongen? I don't think he's going to win a title, but he's been throwing in 105, 106 averages for fun recently. Jules Van Dongen is a force right now. It would be really surprising if he won the title, but it wouldn't be that surprising. He has the game, and he's putting himself in that position to do it. Other players have even more work to do, so I'm not going to mention them. But I want to get into what happens if someone withdraws. If one person withdraws, Ross Smith is the first alternate. He's in the European Championships. He's currently the 21st seed. He has nothing to worry about. Second alternate, that's Mike de Decker. Where's Mike de Decker? He's just 1,000 pounds outside of the field. 1,250 pounds is what you get for the first round. If he gets into this field as an alternate, suddenly he is moved into the field. Suddenly, Riccardo Pietreczko is the last man in, and Chris Dobie is the next one, which means Dobie might have to win 2 matches at that point, depending on other things. One win would still be possibly enough if Mike de Decker loses, but if Mike de Decker wins, now he's up to 17-5, and there's even more work that Chris Dobie would have to do, and Riccardo Pietreczko is suddenly in danger as well. Mike de Decker could play his way in, even though he's currently not qualified for the event, because Gerwyn Price has withdrawn from quite a few of these. Michael Smith has withdrawn from some. Michael Van Geuren has withdrawn from some. Yes, there's now penalties if you withdraw from many of these, but that is less of a deterrent when you are winning major titles like Michael Van Geuren is this year, or making major finals like Gerwyn Price is. So there is that chance that 2 of the players will withdraw, and Mike de Decker will backdoor his way into the field. And I'll also mention Steve Beaton. Right now, he's the last person in. If Chris Dobie loses his first round match, that probably, but not guaranteed, probably will mean Beaton goes, unless there's obviously withdrawals and Mike de Decker gets in. But Steve Beaton's the third alternate. So if 3 players withdraw, unlikely, but possible, now Steve Beaton's in the field, and that makes it all the more difficult for other people to get in, because it's no longer Beaton as the player to catch. It's Riccardo Pietreczko, who is, as one of the host nation qualifiers, could be adding on with 1 win a bunch of money. Brendan Dolan might be the player you need to catch on 16-5. So Beaton could find his way back in if he gets in as an alternate. Mike de Decker could get in by right as an alternate. Chris Dobie's right there. And as I mentioned, the most likely of the players further back, Ryan Joyce. But as I said, don't sleep on Jules Van Dongen. He needs a title. It's very unlikely, but he's been throwing in enough 106 averages that it is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say if you're Mike de Decker or Steve Beaton, you've not got your phone on silent this week in case there is that call-up for the Euro Tour. Well, we'll be back in a few moments to answer some of your listener questions. But before we do, let's get to our final guest on this week's show. And as I said earlier, what a year he's having so far without that tour card. Another title that he's picked up recently is the WDF World Cup men's singles, and he is top of the Challenge Tour Order of Merit. Here's our chat with Berry Van Peer. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Challenge Tour Order of Merit leader and the newly crowned WDF World Cup men's singles champion, Berry Van Peer. Thanks for the time, Berry. How are you doing?
No worries. I'm doing good. It's been a long time since being back here, so good to be back.
Yeah, great to get you back on. Lots to catch up on since we last had you on the show back in May, and as we come into the last 3 months now of 2023, your most successful year so far, I'm guessing that you don't want this year to end, do you?
2023 can last for a few years.
Let's rewind to when we last spoke, and it was only a few days after you'd won 3 Challenge Tour titles in a weekend. It pushed you to the top of the order of merit. How have you tried to keep yourself grounded since then? Because it's a position that you could quite easily get carried away with and think that the job's done.
Well, I just said to myself right after, I just have to keep going with the thing I'm doing right now, which is just practicing the same, just making sure I'm relaxed, not worried too much, and just not taking it too easy. We already played another Challenge Tour weekend, which I was pretty consistent, but just didn't get the results that I wanted. But that happens. I was still. I just know that the game was there to get further, but just a little bit unlucky there. Just kept going as before, and as well, why would you change the thing, when you've had success with it? So, yeah.
Well, during the summer, we did see you play the Modus League the next weekend of the Challenge Tour events that you mentioned there. And one run that I've got to mention away from those events was in the Players' Championships back in July, getting to a quarter-final. You'd played in a couple of weekends this year already, but what did that run mean to you?
The quarter-final at the Pro Tour was, of course, very nice. Felt very unlucky in the quarterfinal because Ryan was playing really good finishes. But yeah, still quarterfinal without a tour card at that moment still. I just climbed the rankings with that, and maybe I'll qualify for something through that, but I haven't played all the tournaments this year, so I just have to get going on the last ones.
Yeah, you mentioned there you've not played all the Players' Championship events. Is that just how things have worked out? You've had other things on, other circumstances that you've not been able to play more of them?
Well, I have had to sometimes make a choice. For example, it was either World Cup or Pro Tour a few days, so I decided to go to the World Cup if I got picked for the team. And one time I just needed a rest, and all things like that, just now I can choose to play or not, and next year I kind of have to play it. Well, not have to, but I mean, I should play everything because then I have a tour and I have to get full use out of it, but now that I have the option, it's just sometimes nice to be able to just relax.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Make the most of the breaks where you can get them. And you had the 4th Challenge Tour weekend, no titles that time round. As you say, it was fairly consistent that weekend, a couple of last 16s, but it turned out to be a fairly wide open weekend, 5 different winners, and I think there was 5 different runners up as well. So how did you reflect on that weekend, leaving Milton Keynes still with that healthy lead at the top?
Well, it felt good. I was kind of happy with the winners and the runners up, but also I didn't really pay that much attention to it, because I knew if I would just keep going myself, then I should be fine. But of course, there's still one more weekend, and anything can happen still. The people that are in the top are definitely in a good form, and with all the calculations, it's really hard to get past me without me. They also have to not make me win anything, so I'm just going in there relaxed, just enjoying the last weekend, and if I get some good results, it's nice, and just have to cross my fingers and just continue, just no worries, just cannot bother myself too much with the statistics or anything, so that will be fine, I think.
Definitely. Well, we'll come back to the Challenge Tour in a moment, but away from the PDC, you mentioned it, the World Cup in the WDF a couple of weeks ago now, and you're spotting the Netherlands team. It was confirmed, I think, around early August time, so quite a wait before you did get to make that trip to Denmark. So I'm guessing it was an event that you were keen to play in and put that Netherlands shirt on.
Yeah, definitely. A few years ago, I was in the national selection, so they could have picked me to go to World Cup as well. They didn't, because they said I didn't have enough experience in the international circuit, which I felt was very weird. So I was kind of motivated to go this year if I was picked. They added me to the selection, and then I just said, you don't have to pick me for a selection if you're not going to send me to World Cup. So that was a very positive thought of me getting picked. I was very excited for it. It just took a while before we could go, of course, but at the same time flew by. So, yeah, the excitement takes over, and yeah, it was very much fun. So, yeah, it was great.
Well, looking back at your run to the men's singles title, and one game stands out in particular, the last 32 against Peter Machin, 3-0 down. You survive match starts, you take out a 1-6-1 on the way to coming back and winning that game 4-3. So how are you feeling after that one?
Oh, that was like a freaking roller coaster. Well, I was very fortunate in the first 3 legs, to be honest. I missed a few chances to not go 3-0 down. I was kind of annoyed at myself for not taking those. But I knew I was scoring really, really well that whole week. So I knew I was scoring better than Peter. And I was like, okay, if I just make sure I keep scoring good, I'll be fine. And then I remembered I left 161 and he left like 60 or something for the match. And I was like, well, I missed it yesterday on the ball. Now it's go time. Like, now you kind of have to. And then I hit that one and I felt more like I could win the match again. I just knew my scoring was better, so I was like, okay, if I just keep going, scoring, get him, and the next leg was good, and then I survived 3 match starts, and then we had to blow up, and then, it maybe took 8 tries, I think, and I could start, and I was like, okay, if I just keep consistent, I'll be fine, and then I hit a 180, and I was like, okay, I just kind of felt like I had already won at that point, which made me very calm for the next few games, actually, and if I would have not survived those matches, all of this could not happen. So,
well, I remember when we spoke last time about your run to the Dutch Open title, and you mentioned a 1-2-1 finish in the early rounds that saved you. The 1-6-1 this time round saving you, and you end up going on to win the title like you did at the Dutch Open. Is one of them better than the other, or do you put them on par, those 2 big finishes, when you needed them the most?
I would say, I don't know, it's hard, in the Dutch Open it was 3-all or 2-all, I don't remember, and he was waiting on a double for the match, so he never got a chance for the match. But with Peter, it was he was waiting on 60 to go 4-0 and win, and then I hit the 161, and then he actually gets 3 match starts, and then it was in the last 32 in the World Cup, and I was like, I could have been out, and then I just marched on to, kind of destroy everyone on my path after that. And then the Dutch Open, it was literally the last 2056 where I could have been out, and I still had to win 9 matches or something after. I don't know, I think they're both, from a feeling, they've both been very incredible. I think the 161 was maybe even tougher than the 121, of course, because it's 2 big trebles and a bull. I don't know, I can't decide on which one was better, but I don't know, for the pride, I would say definitely the World Cup one, and for the biggest title, maybe Dutch Open, but it's a real tough one. I can't choose, man.
Well, 2 great checkouts to have had this year, and we are into October now. It's an important month with the Challenge Tour, the final weekend coming up. Quite a break between the Challenge Tour weekends during the season. Do you prefer having those breaks, or does it mean that you've got more time to think about your current position and what you could possibly go on to achieve?
I think it's good and bad. For the people who are maybe trying to find some rhythm in their game, or getting match practice in and wanting to get some good results, is kind of tough. Also, if you're in good form, it's sometimes kind of tough to having to wait so long, and you want to play so much, but you can't because you have to wait. But in my position, I think maybe because I had that fantastic weekend in the middle, and then more of a break afterwards, and the weekend after was a consistent weekend, but just not good enough for my feeling. It's maybe nice to know getting to reset until the last weekend. I know it's time enough to think about the world ranking, but at the same time, I feel, I don't feel too worried or pressured about my position, so I'm not. Yeah, I'm a guy who I don't mind to break, but at the same time, I didn't like the breaks during the Pro Tour seasons the last few years, in the middle of the summer. If you're playing well, you kind of want to keep playing, and then if your form reaches up before the summer, and you have to wait until after summer again, it's kind of, that's annoying, but besides that, I think it's fine, I think.
Well, looking at the order of merit as it stands going into that final weekend, 2 Dutch players in 1 and 2, yourself top of the table, and then you've got Christian Kist, your closest challenger, and we saw him recently get to a Players' Championship final as well. Different circumstances, but you've both had to overcome difficult times to get back to your best. So for you, what has been the main inspiration to not give up during those hard times?
Like I would just say dreams, like you get motivated from knowing what you wanted to achieve, how much you have to give for it, and it just makes you keep going. You see your friends or people who have inspired you before or something achieve things again, and you're getting motivated from them. Looking at Christian, he's had a rough time as well, and I love the guy. He's so amazing. He's so friendly, funny, and he's super good at darts. So, looking back at him as well, it's amazing what he's done this year. If we could both finish 1 and 2, I would be very happy because he's deserved his tour card. You've seen it in the Pro Tour this year. I would love it if we would both make it, and I think we've both got enough motivation to definitely keep going.
Definitely, yeah. Great to see Christian getting back to his best as well. And you mentioned there about taking inspiration from players as well. And we've seen players before they've lost their tour cards. Some of them haven't recovered from it. Some of them they've come back and they've come back stronger as well. And for you then, are there any players in particular that you've looked at this year and gone, well, they've lost their tour card and look what they're doing now, and you've took that inspiration from them?
Well, there's a few. If I look at for example, the last few years, maybe not just this year in particular. For some people, it might have been good for a break to lose their tour card. For example, Christian, of course, himself. After his injury, it might have been better for him to just have a small break, and now you see what he's playing is crazy. Another Dutch guy, Jelle Klaassen, has lost his tour card and just kept on winning on the WDF system. It's crazy. Some people just need that small break. Look at Dirk van Duijbode. He lost his tour card. Just had that reset, and now he's just look at him now. He's crazy. And maybe I'll be one of them as well.
Yeah, you're certainly heading that way, and I know you spoke to us before about a change in mindset for you this year after Q School didn't go according to plan. You wanted to enjoy the game, and it's worked out so far with what you've won. But what's the plan going into what's going to be a big weekend on the Challenge Tour the next few weeks? Are you going to be in the Players' Championships? Have you got anything else lined up?
I think I should be in the Players' Championships anyway, due to mostly 2 players being not able to travel anyway. So I'll be playing the Players' Championships next time and the time after. So I got some nice tournaments to look forward to, and it's just gonna mostly just enjoy the Challenge Tour. Hopefully finish at the top, and then we'll just see what happens on the Pro Tour. If I have a few good runs, I can still make the Players' Championship finals maybe, and maybe through that ranking the World Championships as well, which makes my and Christian's spot for the World Championship go to number 3 and 4 on the Challenge Tour, I think. So that would be nice for those people too.
Yeah, definitely. And lastly, before we let you go, you've already achieved a lot this year with being a wild list and everything, the Dutch Open, the World Cup, Challenge Tour titles. But for you, which achievement are you most proud of so far this year?
Now you're asking me something that I have no idea of. I don't know. Well, it started off with the Dutch Open, then the Challenge Tours came around, then some nice Pro Tour results, and then maybe the World Cup. Maybe the World Cup is my favorite for the year. Becoming the 5th Dutch player to ever win that title, becoming world champion with our team, which we have only done once, I believe, in the past. So yeah, it just feels amazing. Representing your country, I think, is worth so much. If you look at how many people live in your country and you're like one of those 4 people that are there in the men's team. Of course, we have women and youth as well. But it just feels amazing to play in that shirt. So maybe I think that's my favorite for so far.
Can't argue with that. Well, it's a big few weeks ahead, Berry. Thanks again for the time. We wish you all the best for the rest of the year and what else is to come in 2023 as well.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Berry for joining us, and we'll finish up with some listener questions from the mailbag. The first one comes from Sean Rafferty, who says, do you think the Grand Prix should try and move away from Leicester? The venue didn't seem fitting for a major and the crowds were flat all week. Would it be worth trying to move this event to Scotland or Wales? Currently, neither host a PDC event apart from Premier League nights.
That's a good question. And I think the PDC have obviously asked themselves that. I think that's part of the reason that it's TBC. Another part is, of course, the desire to get the event back to Ireland if the logistics open up for them to go back, in terms of the City West being available at this time to host a week-long event. But I think there is something to be said about moving some events to other places, because most of the ranking events are still in England, especially now with the World Grand Prix being in England as well. The only one that's not is the European Championships. There are no ranking majors in Scotland, or ranking events full stop, as the question acknowledges. And there's none in Wales either. And even outside that, the only other televised event outside the Premier League in either of those countries anytime recently was, of course, when the Champions League was in Cardiff. And that seemed to do pretty well. It doesn't seem like that event's coming back, but that did seem to do well. I think getting events in more countries, or major events, is a good thing. And I think moving them around, at least more of the events around, is a good thing. And maybe, even though it seems to work, maybe having 2 majors in Minehead is one too many. It's the perfect venue for the UK Open, and it does have the facilities to have, because it has 2 stages, to host the Players' Championship finals. But I don't think that's necessary. And maybe that's the question, is can that event get moved to Wales or to Scotland or to the Netherlands or to Germany or something? Maybe that's the next event to move as well. I think if this event can get back, this event being the World Grand Prix, to Dublin, that's the best answer. But I do agree that there's seems to be a saturation of major ranking events in England, and maybe it's the Players' Championship finals that should be on the move.
Yeah, and I've got to say, Sean wasn't the only one offering this opinion last week. I saw quite a few of our listeners on social media saying the same thing about Leicester being the venue for the World Grand Prix. Is it time to go somewhere else? And I think in an ideal world, the PDC, they'd love to have the Grand Prix back in Ireland, in Dublin, or somewhere else in Ireland. But this event is the World Grand Prix. It was in Ireland for a long time, 20 odd years, Dublin. The play on words, it felt like it had a home there, but it was lost because of the pandemic. The City West out of action remains the same. And we had Matt Porter, the PDC chief executive, on the show last week, and we mentioned about the PDC going back to Ireland, the long list of venues that he spoke to us about before, some of them having question marks next to them, some that they've looked at and they're not suitable. So it's an ongoing thing for them. And you've got to say as well, trying to pack out a venue 7 nights a week, particularly the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those first nights of the week, it's going to be a tough ask anywhere you go. And I don't think Leicester's alone in that. I think it's been the same when the event's been in Dublin, when in the Grand Prix. I remember some very quiet nights watching the Grand Prix a few years ago when it was still there. But I do agree with Sean with the atmosphere. It did feel quite flat for the first 3 days at least. And I do like his idea of Scotland and Wales getting involved. And I think they should have more PDC events. Maybe an option could be that you switch between each year. So 1 year it's in Scotland, the next year it's in Wales. And I think that would probably grow the demand for fans from those countries as well, because some probably won't commit to going every year. If they know, it's going to be on next year, I'll go to it next year. But if it's every other year, maybe you're going to get more people in, looking forward to going, saying, well, it's not going to be on next year. Let's try and get to it this year. And I know we've spoke about Gerwyn Price, and he wants to see more events in Wales and to have less boos from the crowd, which again, it's a shame that we're still seeing that. But on the flip side, if we do take an event to Wales, are they all going to be booing Gerwyn Price's opponents? So I think wherever you go, a lot of the time you are going to see the crowd get involved. But aside from that, I think Scotland and Wales definitely worth trying out for the Grand Prix, or indeed, like you mentioned there, another event as well.
Our next question comes from Connor Ellis, and he asks, and I think he's undercounting in this, for the 100th time, is Peter Wright back?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise if Connor's got his counting wrong. He's a former teammate of mine at the Stowe Upland retreat. Thanks for the question, Connor. And it looked like on Friday night that Peter Wright was back. I just got in from going for a curry, so I missed the first two quarterfinals and the first set of the Wright Humphries game. But I saw Peter Wright go 2-0 up, and you're thinking, wow, he's playing all right here. A semi-final looks to be on the cards tomorrow night. 2-1 up, misses those match darts, and Luke took his chance with both hands. And again, every credit to Luke. We spoke about him earlier, the way that he came back in that game. And I think in the past, we've seen Luke shake his head when things have gone wrong. 12 months ago, probably would have lost that game. But the determination to come back, Peter Wright, he had no answer. And if it had been Joe Cullen in the semi-finals, he's got the better of Peter Wright in games before. But I think Peter Wright would have fancied his chances against Joe and of making another major final. And would we have said that a few months ago? Perhaps not. But I do think the form is slowly coming back. And as ever with Peter, we are talking about his darts, what he's using. And he went with the Michael van Gerwen darts last week and cheekily said he's going to win the tournament with MVG's darts. Didn't quite come off on this occasion. But I think we are seeing Peter Wright slowly start to come back. The hunger seems to be there. And I think if we go back a couple of months, the disappointing match play, the World Series Down Under, it wasn't looking good for him. But I think there is signs that he's coming back into some form. But I do think the darts, there is a question mark around that. What is he going to be used next time? Because I don't think the Michael van Gerwen darts are going to be there in a few months' time when we get to Ali Pali. So I think he needs to find something that he's going to hopefully try and stick with for this running for the rest of the season.
I've heard that last sentence said many times over the 7 years we've been doing this show. Yeah, I'm not going to say Peter Wright's back, and I think I talked about this on our last show, or if it wasn't the last show, then it was the preview show, and that's why it's, for the 100th time. But, Peter Wright being back is Peter Wright being at a level that can win the world title, at being at a level that he can win the world title with his back against the wall against someone playing like a world champion, which is what he did coming back in that final against Michael Smith almost 2 years ago, and being able to pummel and punish and destroy Michael van Gerwen in a match that Michael van Gerwen didn't do that much wrong in. He didn't play at his best, but he didn't do that much wrong in that final in just a few months before the world shut down. And maybe I do need to go to Mexico if it's going to happen. And if the U.S. government shuts down, like it might at the end of this year, maybe I will go to Mexico. And that'll bode very good news for Peter Wright. And he certainly will be back because he's won a world title on a world match play when I've been in Mexico. But I'm not going to say he's back. He is still moving in that direction. And this past week was the brightest sign we've seen from him in a very long time. Yes, he blew a 2-0 lead. And yes, he missed 4 darts to close that out, including 3 in hand. And if he was at his best, that wouldn't have happened. But overall, he has to be pleased with his performance. He is the only player to run the eventual champion close. He had 2 very, very good performances before that. And in the month leading up to that, he was looking like a version of himself. And for the last 18 months, he didn't even look like a version of himself. So I'm not going to say Peter Wright's back, but Peter Wright is moving in that direction, and he keeps making steps towards being back. And that's the important thing right now.
Definitely is. Well, the last of our listener questions comes from Tristan M, who says, first, congrats on the Condor partnership. Secondly, do Alex or Burton have a man cave to sweeten a loss after a darts match?
Well, being that in the league I'm in,
my team's won 31 consecutive matches. I don't know what a loss is anymore. I've probably now jinxed tonight's match. So by the time you're listening to that, the streak will either be 32 or -1. So we can go and re-record this tomorrow if need be. But all serious aside, or all jokes aside, I don't have a man cave to sweeten the loss, but I'm a bachelor, so I guess my entire flat is a man cave. So yes and no.
Very good. Well, funny you should say that, Tristan, because as some of our listeners know, I moved from Suffolk to Bolton during the summer, and my dartboard has been sitting on the floor in my spare bedroom ever since. And my dad came up to visit me at the weekend, brought his drill with him so we could get the dartboard up. We've got a few pictures up as well. So the man cave is coming along nicely, and if people want to see the man cave, I'll share a few pictures on our Twitter. Let me know. It's nowhere near as good as Gerwyn Price's one. That is pretty special. But as for sweetening a loss after a darts match, well, I don't win as many matches as you do, Burton, but my darts matches, like yours, are usually in the pub or in a bar or in a social club, and here in Bolton. So the bar, it is never far away to drown my sorrows after another defeat.
I won't ask you an off spreadsheet question about football this week. We'll save that for next week. I'm of course happy about Middlesbrough's 4-0 win over Sunderland, but anything else for this week?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Not good times to be a Stowmarket fan or a Colchester fan for that matter, but never usually is. But just want to say a few thank yous as always. Thank you to our guests for joining us, to Berry and to Luke. Congratulations to both of them on the success that they've had in the last few weeks. And thanks also to Dave Allen at the PDC, a big help in getting us some time with Luke. So we appreciate his help. Thanks to our sponsors, to Condor for coming on board, for sponsoring our question of the week. Thank you as well to Darts Corner for their continued support as well. And this time of year, there's plenty of darts launches going on. Darts Corner is the place to go if there's something that you like the look of. They stock more than 30 different darts manufacturers, so they're the place to go. Dartscorner.co.uk here in the UK, or dartscorner.com in America and Canada. And just lastly, thanks to everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. The darts, it doesn't stop. We've got the Euro Tour this weekend, the last one of 2023, the last Women's Series weekend of the year as well. So lots of darts to enjoy. So make sure you do that. Enjoy the darts.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to both our guests this week. We will, as Alex says, be back to look at all of that and more. Maybe we even need to start try to bring some of those players in from Asia now that the Asian Championship just happened. But let us know. Let us know who you want. It's only 2 months until the PDC World Championship. It's a little under 2 months until the WDF World Championship. So we need to take that more global outlook and try to get some people on. So if there's any of those qualifiers that you want, you want us to speak to, start letting us know. And let us know other things too. Keep getting your questions in. We have a good one as well that we are saving for next week. But if you get us 3 more good ones, maybe we'll save that one for 2 weeks from now. So that's up to you guys. Until then, hang tight.